To our next conversation, as this got to do with the oil sector. And then, of course, the buzz was just on and everywhere yesterday about the acquisition of OVH by, the NNPC by OVH, more like it. And that did create a lot of buzz. But let's even begin with this OANDO story because there was some sort of link to that conversation. By the way, I have an energy expert standing by to chime in on this conversation to give us a better perspective to it. OANDO PLC yesterday, Thursday, announced its acquisition of Nigerian Ajib oil company, NEC, from Italian energy major Eni. Now, according to OANDO's press statement, the acquisition is worth $783 million, including reimbursement and consideration for the asset. Now, speaking on the brokered deal, OANDO CEO Wale Tinubu, the president's nephew, said it was the culmination of 10 years of toil, resilience, and an unwavering belief in the realization of our ambition since the 2014 entry into the joint venture via the acquisition of Conoco Phillips Nigeria portfolio. He added that the company will continue to pursue strategic diversification and opportunities with the broader energy sector that provide enhanced growth and value. He went on and on and on. The broker deal raised OANDO's current participation interest in OML's 60, 61, 62, and 63 from 20% to a whopping 40% right now. But considering the news that broke yesterday about an OVH acquisition of the NNPC, the NNPC actually released a press statement early this morning. And the press statement reads as the attention of the NNPC Limited has been drawn to a press release signed by the Paul Ibe, a media advisor. Oh, by the way, there were accusations. What led to this was there were accusations by Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the APC, about how the president is gradually using his influence to take over some federal assets like he did in Lagos State. That was the meaning of that accusation. I wish I can get it and read it verbatim so that I won't be quoting myself and I won't be quoted that I'm quoting out of the book. Let me see if I can get through to that very quickly so that I can quote Alhaji Atiku Abubakar himself. So that statement reads, part of that statement, or partly reads, just as Alpha Beta, Primero, and others and others act as Tinubu's proxies in Lagos. Let me repeat, just as Alpha Beta, Primero, and others act as Tinubu's proxies in Lagos, managing critical sectors and generating revenue for him and his family, he has begun to replicate this at the federal level. Based on the news of the acquisition of the OVH, the NNPC by the OVH. So it's on the basis of that the NNPC released this press statement. As in that statement, the former president was quoted to have lamented the criminal hijack of the NNPC by corporate cabals around the current president. He was also quoted to have listed the retention of Mr. Mele Kyari as the Group Chief Executive Officer of NNPC as a compensation for the alleged acquisition of NNPC Retail Limited by OVH, in which he claimed Mr. Wale Tinubu held 49% stake. Now, he further alleged that the NNPCL Retail Limited OVH acquisition deal was part of a grand scheme by President Ahmed Tinubu to integrate his personal business interest into Nigeria's public enterprise and federal company. Well, that quote went on and on. But the NNPC is releasing its facts. They said, fact one, we are a commercially focused and profit-driven company managed by professionals who are committed to adding value to the nation. So for me, the emphasis here is on a commercially focused. That means now money bring us together, right? Okay. Two, investment decisions by NNPCL Limited management are strictly determined on the basis of commercial viability and national interest. And then three, at the time NNPCL Limited acquired OVH in 2022, OANDO, in which Mr. Wale Tinubu has equity interest, has fully divested its equity in OVH. That is, they don't promote their investment and waiting in Minabi in OVH. So the other partners, Vitol and Helios, OANDO actually began its investment in 2016, with Vitol and Helios opted to merge NNPC Retail Limited into OVH. Not the entire NNPC, the retail into OVH. So NNPC agreed to merge its retail into OVH and thereafter retain NNPC Retail Limited as the company name post-merger. So even though they've merged, they'll remain NNPC. Okay. And then 5, the first step of merging NNPC Retail Limited into OVH has been completed, and the post-merger renaming as NNPC Retail Limited is ongoing. So that means any OANDO filling station, which is retail of OVH that you see, may be rebranded now to NNPC. I guess that's what this is trying to say. But our energy expert is on the line. He would help us put a perspective to that. Now, 6 is they said, contrary to the false alarm raised, neither Wale Tinubu nor the president has any interest in the OVH accusation. So why not they accuse the president and his nephew? As a businessman, 7, the former vice president should know that effectiveness in business leadership is best measured by balance sheets and bottom lines rather than pedestrian considerations. Then he said 8, the management of NNPC Limited under the leadership of Mele Kyari has done way well in growing the economy's fortunes, as shown in the 2023 audited finance statement, where they made 3.3 trillion naira profit, and we go on and on and on and on. Well, Jide Pratt is an energy expert, one of its finest in Nigeria. Jide, thank you so much for obliging me on an interview this evening.
Thank you for talking to me as always.
Thank you, I appreciate you. So this whole drama, first of all, with the interpretation that the NNPC is giving us, where did the Nigerians get it that OANDO has now took over all of the NNPC? So that means that the president, by proxy, now owns the entire NNPCL. Help us put a perspective to that so that we understand.
Okay, so I think that what you read out is very, very detailed.
Yes.
And I don't think there's a doubt to that, because that's NNPC's position and they're sticking to it. However, more often than not, when there's a merger or an acquisition, you find out that the buying party, more often than not, maintains the key name of the bought as against the bought party. And I need to say that again. The buying party.
That is me way buy am. Me way buy am. If na me buy you now, my name is Precious.
So
you are Jide. So I'll keep going by my name, even though Precious and Jide are the same company now. Right?
Fantastic.
Good.
Fantastic.
Thank
so
you.
That's worked out well. So we became, and you've aptly explained how OANDO sold to become OVH. OVH, like you rightly said, had 3 parties to that transaction: OANDO, Vitol, and Helios.
Yes.
When they sold as a joint entity to NNPC, quote and unquote, retail. If you remember, at that time, NNPC released a statement, as is NNPC Retail, released a statement categorically saying that they had bought over OVH as an entity.
Yes.
And what they were doing is that they had bought the retail infrastructure, and they had also bought what they call an ASPM. An ASPM is a floating jetty, more or less. So that ASPM belonged to OVH, and NNPCL, as in retail, bought it. So based on that, they started rebranding. And you notice that OVH as a company, let me say, got swallowed. And since it was bought, we never saw OVH stations again after that. And NNPC.
So that's why we barely see OANDO filling stations. When you say OVH, let's understand it. So that's why we barely see OANDO filling stations now. Most of them have now been rebranded to NNPC.
So let's go back. Remember your statement. We started from OANDO before we got to OVH.
Okay.
So OANDO, when OANDO started out, and she had some relationship with a company called Ocean and Oil. But when OANDO came in, OANDO bought an existing company, if you remember the name, Unipetrol.
Yes, Unipetrol, yes.
Very good. So OANDO came out as the name OANDO PLC.
Yes.
Now, so you saw a lot of stations then that were branded OANDO. And the tagline then was the future. Now, back to what you said and from what you read. When OANDO sold her downstream assets, her downstream interest, which was OANDO PLC Marketing, they sold and it became owned by 3 parties. You've rightly again explained to us who those 3 parties were. Remember, so they branded from OANDO to the name OVH, which was OANDO, Vitol, and Helios. Are we together?
That is, yes, that is OANDO now have become OANDO, Vitol, and Helios. because OANDO has now bought those Helios and Vitol and Helios, right? That's good.
What happened was that OANDO didn't buy Vitol, and it became a three-party purchase. Don't forget, OANDO sold. Let's say she took 1/3. Maintained the name OANDO. Vitol took another 1/3. Helios took another 1/3. So let's assume that they had bought those 100% shares in 30-30, but OANDO held 30. The name OVH became the stations we saw. So at that point, we stopped seeing OANDO and started seeing OVH.
Okay.
We're okay up to this point.
Yes, we're okay up to this point. I hope my listeners are also okay up to this point. So go ahead.
Okay. So immediately OVH as an entity now said, you know what? We want to sell. So it means that whatever it was, NNPC Retail came out with a statement. We have acquired OVH.
So NNPC being a Nigerian-owned company or a limited, a private company owned by the Ministry of Finance and Petroleum, now decided to go and buy that OVH now, which is a combination of OANDO, Vitol, and Helios.
Now let's clarify that statement. Don't forget that by the time NNPC bought OVH, they had not been incorporated to be Ministry of Finance Incorporated and
because that was in 2016 and this happened through the Petroleum Industry Bill. Okay,
brilliant.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So that clarification is necessary.
Okay.
So NNPC, which was government owned and run, went ahead to buy this subsidiary called OVH. Now, if they bought the subsidiary, don't forget that they moved most of the management staff.
Moved from where to where? From OVH to now NNPC.
To NNPC. So if you
okay, because if we don't buy you now, and I go fit, if we use them as we like, Abi.
Well, that's what it was.
Now we get you.
That the managing director of OVH became the managing director of NNPC Retail.
Okay.
That was what happened.
Okay.
So what is now puzzling to everybody is that if I bought you over with the intent to deepen my retail presence, how do I now come back how many years after? The company that I had bought over, I'm now going back to rebrand to that company name. That is where there seems to be a lot of confusion.
Because even NNPC in their statement did not clarify that confusion, and that's what my worry is.
They did not. So let's go back and let's keep on trying to unravel this.
Help us unravel. That is why I called you, so that help us solve the maths.
Good.
Thank you.
So what it now means is that if we look at it on the face of it, on a legal perspective, and I spoke to a colleague of mine who is a legal mind, and she told me this and said, look, technically, the shares of OVH, quote and unquote, were bought or diluted by NNPC Retail Limited. But it does not mean that OVH had been dissolved as an organization. So look at it this way. I don't buy person. I buy person motor. I don't change the vehicle papers. So the vehicle papers are now in my name. But that car still exists now, or the car don't die.
The car still exists now. So
that is it. So
but that car remain my property now, even though say it still exists now, because you know if you get claim to them again because now me don't buy them.
Absolutely. So if I decide to give you back, follow me.
Okay,
so if I decide to give you back that car, is there anything in the law that says I cannot?
You go give me back if you decide to give me back the car. Me now go give you back the money where you pay me to buy them before.
You don't have to. I can gift it to you. So don't forget that this is what we're saying, and we need to be clear about this thing. The way NNPC did this transaction by going to get a court order is what makes it a bit more confusing. Ideally, what should have happened is that, okay, OVH that was bought over before still exists. It's coming back to buy some percentage share back and wants to take back retail branding right from NNPC Retail.
The OVH will be saying that NNPC buy you. Now I don't come back now. Can't get the mind to want come buy retail branding rights from the NNPC we've been buying before.
Absolutely. So
Mr. Jide,
remember you made a statement. You made a statement and say, so what it means now is that they're going to keep on rebranding to OVH.
Yes.
And these are the questions. Does it make sense to have ceded the brand right of a certain company to say you want to focus since you are the owner?
Years
down the line,
okay,
you now come back and say, okay, I'm giving it back to you. Continue to brand again.
Does it also make sense that a lesser company that was acquired by a bigger company has now developed the capacity to now buy back the bigger company that bought it before? I don't understand.
The straight answer is no. It doesn't make sense.
Then what is going on?
Hold on, but it doesn't make it illegal. Let's be clear.
Okay.
Now, what has further dented the image of that company, NNPC Retail, is that their track record hasn't shown them to be trustworthy as an organization in terms of management. So
because there hasn't been any transparency.
There hasn't been any transparency over a long period of time. So it does seem that once people see that, there's a trust deficit. And the question we should be asking is that what is Ministry of Finance Incorporated and the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, don't they call board meetings? And when they call board meetings, aren't these issues brought up for discussion in terms of corporate governance? Because these things are, they further dent the trust and intention of that company called NNPC Retail.
Okay, so Mr. Pratt, where did the president's nephew, the managing director of OANDO, or formerly OANDO, come into this mix?
Now, don't forget that Mr. Tinubu has been in oil and gas. He was a lawyer.
Absolutely.
But then he decided that, you know what, I'm going to put one leg first in oil and gas, which is why we said he started with what we called OANDO marketing.
Yes.
Now,
by his records.
Correct. What he was doing with OANDO marketing was that, you know what, let's play in the downstream space. But they also started putting the second leg deep by deep into upstream services and upstream. So it goes to say that Mr. Tinubu has had, and not Mr. Tinubu as the president, Mr.
Yes, Wale Tinubu.
As the oil and Mr.
Yes,
Wale
please.
Tinubu.
Yes.
Has had, I mean, if you look at 2000 till now, over 25 years he has played in that energy space.
Yes.
So it means that since his focus had moved, because then you now had OANDO Energy Resources, and that was focused on crude oil trading and oil and gas services.
And this trading is both. Okay, just go ahead.
This trading is.
I was going to say both sports and otherwise, right?
Yeah, that's fine. But I mean, it basically was that he was playing in crude oil trading as well as OANDO supply and trading, which is what we call distillate.
Okay.
So it means that his interest and his appetite in the industry has grown. But he has decided that, look, since I've divested from downstream, upstream is the play. So let me go and buy a major player, which is where the Ajib transactions comes in. So my point is this. He has had track record. Back to what we said about trust deficit. If people don't trust something or don't understand something, then they will try and make linkages. So it goes to one thing has happened. NNPC has come out with a statement. OANDO has also come out with a statement. So it's now to look at the statement and begin to say, is this right or is this wrong? But in terms of what they have said and what they have done, the linkage is because the surnames are the same. The surnames are the same. They are not exactly known to be people that don't have a relationship. He has a relationship with his cousin.
Now, so Mr. Okay, go ahead. Let me let you land. It's okay. It's okay. I don't want to
So the conjecture is very, very clear. Saying name, the president is in power. And I mean, it's not unfounded for people to say, okay, he's getting this transaction because the president is in power.
Okay.
It's not unfounded. But whether it is proven now is another kettle of.
But remember, there is also a Shell upstream conversation that was ceded to OANDO too, which people are also saying that the president decided to take that decision because to favor his cousin or nephew, as it were.
So remember that in Nigeria, we found out over the last, over the last year or so, a lot of international oil companies have been divesting
absolutely
from what we call onshore or swamp.
Yes.
So when you're saying onshore or swamp, just assume it's closer to land than it's closer to deep water. So it means that some of the things that the challenges might be that security issues,
dealing with communities and all of those,
dealing with coast community. So it means that they've stretched themselves to a point where they're saying, you know what, let's focus on offshore, deep offshore. Now, it now means they're trying to sell to major players, or let me say, Seplat is a major player if we begin to call. But it's hard not to call OANDO in energy, back to what we said, because of track record. So when Shell was divesting, it means that one of the names that came up, OANDO put in a bid as well.
And OANDO got the bid. And then there is a Tinubu involved in an OANDO. And this happened in the administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, remember?
Correct.
Okay. So but let's also leave that one corner. There's also an Ajip and Eni issue too.
That's the Ajip and Eni that they just signed. So what that meant is that Ajip Eni are basically as well selling some of their oil fields. Don't forget that when they had those oil wells or oil fields, they were under JV. So if they're reducing their ownership, it goes back to the same thing we just talked about when we talked about shallow or, onshore. They want to sell to people who are local and then exit that portion of their own business. This has also happened. And now the announcement is out that it's taking them about 10, 11 years. They're finally where they are. Don't forget what we're saying, that the conjecture will still be there. But this transaction has happened. So it goes back to the letter of the law. Is it a legal transaction? And if it is, then as much as we could have our reservations, the reality is that it's gone and they move on with their life.
So is this some sort of coincidence that most of this transaction, that of Shell, the one that is now concluded, even though Wale Tinubu claims it started in 2016 or thereabout, far back, I think 2022, 2016, is it a coincidence that all of this now came to fruition while we have a President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in government?
So this is how I would answer that. Is it a coincidence? Maybe, and maybe not. But what it means is that if a relationship had started and a deeper relationship between two parties makes that transaction go over the line, then it's not a coincidence. If, on the other hand, the transactions were going, and with or without the involvement of Mr. President, the transaction went over the line based on the fact that that organization met the criteria, then it is a coincidence.
But right now, we don't. Right now, the picture isn't clear enough for us to make any judgments.
Sorry to butt in, but this is what I will say, man. It now behoves on ladies and gentlemen of the press to begin to ask, which is one of the things you're doing, seeking clarity. But it also means that ladies and gentlemen of the press need to be asking the right questions to two parties. The presidency, these are the allegations, what are your options, what are you saying?
That is if we will get a response immediately.
That is it. But not to ask is the greatest undoing, because we'll all keep on guessing.
I hope you do know that by this show and this question I'm asking on air is also asking the presidency.
Well,
absolutely. So go ahead.
I would still appreciate, because you see, you have a reach, you have a voice. Why you could ask those of us who are in the energy sector our opinions. The truth of the matter is that, as we say, it's better to hear from the horse's mouth. So it's a better thing to say, we have called them, they have refused to comment. We have called them, they have said they will provide. This is the only way we can begin to get our country back on where it needs to be, because too many questions are unanswered.
All right. So where does the present fuel scarcity come in all of this mix? I did ask you a question the last time you were here. I told you that I tried to get fuel in a particular, major marketer's filling station, and one of the managers there told me, I tried to find out, I ask questions for a living, don't blame me. And I tried to find out why we have this scarcity, and the person said, well, it is the fault of NNPC, because OANDO has bought all NNPC, and NNPC is insisting that they will be the one to sell to everyone, and that it is impossible for them to feed everybody. So that is why we're suffering. And then major marketers recently have also accused the NNPC of not supplying them enough. And then if you look at the way fuel is being distributed, only NNPC is selling as 585 naira. Every other filling station cannot sell at that price or have not sold at that price. So where does that keep Nigerians in that, accusation that, it may have been because the OANDO wants to be the sole distributor of fuel around. That's why this is going on now, or they're suffering fuel scarcity. Please help us put a perspective to that.
Okay, so the clear and short answer to that is that we're experiencing longer fuel queues because there's a short supply of PMS.
Why would that be a short supply? NNPC is the only sole importer of fuel. So why do we have short supply?
So that is why you have short supply. If NNPC as the sole importer needs to bring in 100 trucks, and then they have paid for 50 trucks, for instance, those 50 trucks have come. Or let's say from the 50 trucks, they only paid for 25 and are owing for 25. It means that that I'm selling to them will bring in the 25, wait for them to make more payments and bring in the 50. So if you listen some time back, someone made a statement on the NNPC side saying that as far as they were concerned, they were not owing the amount people said they were owing. But that what normally happens is that from time to time in trading, people owe money. That person was correct, but also incorrect. This is what it is. There are letters of credit to bring in petrol. If, for instance, you're supposed to pay me, and you're supposed to pay me on day 30, in a situation where you have not paid me by day 180, I won't give you more product now. I'll be waiting to collect my money.
And you can't blame me for not giving you. Because I'm running a business. I have to stay afloat.
Brilliant. So what you now find out is that the number of cargoes, the number of trucks that I'm giving to you is reducing. So it means that if I bring 50 and I only have 25, don't forget that it's still 100 people that need it. So it now means that there's a short supply because less product is getting to those retail stations.
So it's basically a demand and supply issue.
Fantastic. And I can't go and bring in product myself because the only person that has been bringing in for 9 years is NNPC. If I bring it, I can't compete with the NNPC price because they were subsidizing it.
Okay, so going back to this NNPC importation or sole importation of fuel, why should the NNPC Limited be the sole importer of fuel, be the sole people who would also export a crude oil when they are now a limited liability company? I want to understand that.
So the question on why they are doing is still a lack of corporate governance. You see that NNPC had been the sole importer because NNPC now, in terms, and I'm talking petrol first, was the only one that had the subsidy books, quote and unquote. Every time they landed product in Nigeria, it meant that if they land at 7 naira and we're selling at 4 naira, there's a 3 naira gap. But if I went to go and bring in product and I landed at 7 naira, there is nobody that is going to give me that gap. But nobody will come and buy from me at 7 naira because NNPC is selling at 4 naira.
Absolutely.
So what it now meant was that they are taking monopoly of that market in terms of imports because they were also the ones managing the subsidy and on that recovery on their own. By taking out of government coffers, your question now becomes extremely important when you say, why should someone who has now become a
limited liability company
be able to do that? But it goes to answer your question by saying, Murphy, Ministry of Finance Incorporation, which is basically a government, government company, and the Ministry of Petroleum Resources are both government. So what needs to happen for corporate governance to thrive is that you need to dilute that board with people who are driven by higher government, corporate government standards, so that way these decisions will no longer be taken based on what they feel or wish. But board meetings will be held and people will agree and do the right thing. So that every other person, more people need to come into this industry to play. But sadly, that hasn't happened.
So as NNPC is right now, as it is presently constituted, do you believe that they have, that is constituted by the best of the hands in Nigeria, best of the brains in that sector in Nigeria, or in the required sector in Nigeria, to drive it to the desired end?
No, for me, no. And when I say no, I'd ask you a question. A lot of people know about the company NLNG.
Yes, please.
NLNG has run very well because you find out that
it's still government owned partially anyway, right?
Yeah, but it's not controlling shares. So, and that's why you find out they're able to have proper board structures, excellent minds at leadership and management, high corporate governance standards. But it's a far cry from NNPC. There's no transparency in the NNPC when it comes to what are they doing, how are they doing it, but most importantly, what are their corporate governance standards?
So that means positions are not given based on based on eligibility, but on appointments and what. Apologies. All right.
I don't think positions are not given to the best minds, is what I would say.
That's why I said based on eligibility. Who is most eligible?
That is correct.
So why does this keep the average Nigerian? Because we're voice of the people and we'd like to know where Nigerians are in this mix.
Well, where we've always been is being at the background. So when you hear things like power to the people, I'm not really sure that the people even understand what that means. We seem to be in a constant case of the government whips us. We don't even go into hiding, but we turn the other side. So it means that we have not demanded accountability from government. We haven't demanded accountability from people who are in leadership positions. So they keep on getting away with it. So it leaves us where we are, begging for what ideally we should have.
Sad. Thank you so much, Mr. Jide Pratt. Thank you. Brilliant conversation.
Thank you for talking.
I appreciate you all. I'm looking forward to seeing you live in our studio one of those days. Do you promise you'll be here?
We will.
Thank you.
Will.
Thank you so
Very
much.
soon.
I appreciate you big time. Thank you. Do enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you. Bye. Yeah. So